And once again, on behalf of KnowledgeHut, I'd like to thank Mr. Priyal Karekar for agreeing to do this on a very interesting topic, which is key elements of Kanban board. I'd also like to read out Priyal's profile so that you all know his background, and you all will be as pleased as I am to be a part of his webinar. Priyal is a versatile senior IT professional with 20 years of experience in IT, working in various capacities: agile coach, program manager, release train engineer, product management staff, ART and team, scrum master, solution architect. As a leading SAFe 4 program consultant, agile coach, agile practitioner, and a certified SAFe trainer, he's coached multiple teams holding different experiences and agility maturity level in a multi-vendor setup. Priyal is experienced in coaching scrum masters, managers, engineering teams, product management teams, instilling agile mindset, and promoting scrum values, fostering the culture of innovation, flow, alignment, transparency, drive the culture to scale agile across the organization. He is a skilled visionary capable of driving project vision and product roadmap across various assignments, program management of large and complex IT projects, and directing a broad range of corporate IT strategies.
So good evening, everyone. And if people are joining outside India or maybe US or wherever you are, good morning, or whatever the time zone you belong to. And welcome to the webinar, Elements of Kanban. So that is today's topic. And I think Shruti has already done my introduction. But yeah, so that is about me. Uh, so I'm an accredited Kanban trainer as well as a SAFe program consultant. So I usually, you'll find me doing transformation assignments in organizations. Usually what I do is coaching engineering teams on Agile, Scrum, Kanban, SAFe, and DevOps practices. Prior to that, so my experience in Agile is about 10 to 12 years is what is my experience. Prior to that, I was technically hands-on. I used to write code. I used to do technical trainings also prior to that. Okay, so I'll not get into too much details about me, but let us look at the elements of Kanban, and maybe at the end of this webinar, right, at least I want you guys to go back by learning at least something from this particular session. That is my value which I want to create for your 1 hour, right? So today's agenda is going to be like this. Why Kanban? So initially in the first section, I'm going to build a case. Even what is the need of Kanban? There are various frameworks which are already available, but when people will adopt Kanban and what is the problem it solves? So we will talk about that first. Then we'll get into the history of Kanban. How did all this history of Kanban started? Then we'll talk about what is Kanban, and then we'll come to the elements of Kanban, which are the Kanban key practices, the Kanban board elements. We'll do a subtle comparison between the Scrum process and the Kanban process. Many of the folks who attend this Kanban has that question: how is it different from Scrum versus Kanban? What is Kanban board, Scrum board? Is it one and the same, and what it is? And finally, we will also see some couple of trends of adoption of Kanban in the industry, and then we will wrap up with the learning path for the Kanban. Okay, without much ado, let us get into Kanban then. Okay, so our first section is about Kanban. Why Kanban? So let's look at why. So most often we find ourselves in a situation where we are flipping between the work items and unable to complete them before moving out to something else, right? So in the organization we are always busy. So what our stakeholders or our bosses or managers, right, they bombard us with a lot of work items, project issues, emails to be responded. We have competing priorities. Eventually it becomes impossible for us to keep a track of all these things. Now in this scenario we will find ourselves flipping between one work to another work, one task to another task. Maybe even your developers, you'll find between doing this story versus that story, and etc. Always the priorities are changing. And across individuals, across teams, and across departments, and across the entire enterprise or the organization where you are working, many such key, important, and critical tasks, user stories, features, epics are lost on daily basis because of these competing priorities, and we are not able to figure out what I need to do right now, right? Because the work is coming in all the direction. uh, this also results in stressed workforce and overloaded workforce and underproductivity. And the heart of the issue is we are unable to filter the noise from the real work, or unable to prioritize the right work at the right time. So if we are not able to prioritize the right work at the right time, essentially we will not be able to deliver the right value at the right time. So, and hence, the first problem is we'll not be able to be agile and compete in the world of agility. Okay, I'll just pause here. Shruti, if you can confirm if you are able to see my presentation. I see a question. I'm unable to see the share screen. Or somebody can text and chat and confirm if you are able to see the screen. Okay, I'll take it as a yes and I'll move forward that you are able to see my screen's presentation.
We are able to see your screen now, Priyal.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much. So let us look at this picture, right? And I live in Bangalore. And when I go to the office, this is how it looks like. So what do you think about this picture? And whenever I have asked this question to many of my colleagues or folks whom I talk to, right? Or the teams which I coach, they say that, okay, it is chaotic, traffic jam, people are going to office. And if we have such kind of a traffic, it is a lot of delays and it's a frustrating experience, right? So when I asked the question uh, earlier in terms of, what can be done here? So people gave me a couple of answers. Okay, so can we do roundabouts, to manage the traffic? Can we put some traffic lights? Can we do carpooling? Okay, can we use public transport? And or maybe can we dynamically increase the lane of the size? So if we are moving from, towards the direction of the office, and in the morning if the office is a peak time, can we increase the lane dynamically, one additional lane? Okay, and while returning back, maybe that lane increases on the opposite side, right? So maybe a couple of guys gave me that kind of answer. Couple of guys gave me this answer that, why can't we build some flyovers? Why can't we ask the government to build new roads, maybe the ring roads and expressways? Why can't we construct metro rails? Now, when we evaluate these answers, there are two sets of answers here. One set of the answer which is focusing on increasing the available capability. So when we talk about increasing the available capability or the capacity, the road is having a capability or a capacity, right? So it can take about, 3 lanes of vehicles moving in a smoother way. But if you have to increase the capability, you need to build more roads, okay? Or you need to build, metros or new infrastructure. So, and the other set of the answers which gave me inputs like, like using traffic lights or carpools or public transport, those are nothing but set of answers which are trying to manage the demand versus the available capacity of the road. Okay. So if we have to build new roads or new metros or the new infrastructure, is it even feasible and viable option? And who's going to give us money? And how long it's going to take? So should we continue to be in the same state? Okay, so that's one question. If we have to build new things, but possibly with traffic lights, carpool, and public transport, we are able to shape our demand to the available capacity. And Kanban focuses on shaping the demand, okay, the incoming work of items to the available capacity in hand, so that we are transparently able to tell our stakeholders that this is the amount of work which we have and this is what we can deliver. And let us look at the next picture which I have here. And I want to ask you this question. Does this seem familiar to you? So when you look at this, right, this is what most of you guys must be doing in the organization. Okay. your goal, possibly you're trying to deliver some kind of a system, product or service, right? Wherein there could be business analysis done, system analysis, design, development, testing, deployment, so on, right? And below that we have uh, below that we have the input here. So the amount of work which is incoming and the amount of work which is churned out, which is nothing but the output. So the question here is, how's the work coming? How much of the work is coming? What is the capacity that we have? So if you look at the capacity here, which we are talking about, is nothing but the height of this lane, right? Okay. How many work items can get processed here? Okay. Now, when we talk about the work items, it could be user stories, defects, which we are juggling. What are our priorities? And eventually, our output is small. Now, what can be done here? Okay, what is the bottleneck, or where is the bottleneck? And when I ask this type of questions, people say maybe testing is a bottleneck here because there are less people here possibly in testing, and can we add more people here? Now, how do we add more people in testing? Now, if we have to add more people, maybe we will have to hire more people, or we have to get more contract employees, and it's expensive. We need approvals from the manager. The moment you ask your boss that, okay, I need additional funding to hire more people, he'll say, okay, no, that is why I hired you, and your responsibility to deliver that. Now, there is another issue, right? So that is one issue. The other issue is, okay, there are extra people here who are slacking off because this much capacity is not utilized. Can I move these guys here? If you have to move these guys here who are developers into testing, okay, are they full stack? Can they even do it? Or what can be done, right? So there are multiple things which you can do here to manage the demand to the capability which we have. So this is what we are trying to look at. So we need to identify the bottleneck and make sure we have to take in only as much as work which we are able to chew, and as much as work which we can deliver here, right? So the point is, we want to try to match our demand and capability, okay, our demand and capacity, and Kanban will help us to do so. Now, what are the problems which our organizations are having? So the problems are, you know, do we really have dedicated teams? How many of you, right? Many of you here who have joined are either the Scrum Masters, or maybe you are managers, or maybe some program managers, or agile managers, or you are some project managers trying to manage a bunch of people and trying to deliver a couple of some kind of a work. Now, do you have dedicated teams? Maybe you have dedicated people, but are they dedicated for one project? That's the question which we have. Okay. So when I look into the industry, many of my coaches, what they tell is, okay, Priyal, you know what? I have a team, but they need to be focused on both the things. I have a 8-member team, and three of those people are allocated 50% to this particular project and 50% to the current project. Other five of the people are allocated 100% to this. How do I do planning now? I do not know how to do that. Okay, work comes from multiple stakeholders. Okay, work comes from multiple stakeholders. Now, who are these multiple stakeholders? There are multiple line of businesses who are giving them multiple requirements, because you have hosted those systems into various geographies, and various geographies there are multiple SMEs who are telling, by the way, I want this, by the way, I want this, by the way, I want this, right? Now, how do you prioritize that? Now, not in all cases, you may have one particular dedicated PO, okay, but this is how the real situation. Sometimes you are juggling with, multiple stakeholders. We have been asked to work in an agile way of working, but however, we are not able to plan our sprints because we have constantly changing priorities from the stakeholders. The new work comes every day, and we cannot plan the iteration. So but because we have been asked to work in the agile way of working, we somehow manage to plan our iteration. We stuff in some kind of a work. We just do vague sprint planning, and that leads to burnout of people. So I hope you are able to relate to these problems, right? Now, our management, eventually, after all, we do all of this, and finally, our bosses or our management is still not happy, and they complain that, you bring in the problems too late in the game, right? Your problems are discovered late, the defects are discovered late, the blockers are discovered late, the delays, the handoffs. Okay, There is a lack of transparency. I do not even know until the last moment that are you going to deliver or not. So I do not even know how much has been delivered, how much is not delivered. There's a lot of invisible work which is going on behind the scenes. Now there is no systemic improvement in the system of delivery. We are not able to improve in the way we are following the agile way of working, right? So these are a couple of frustrations which our bosses or our management is having. Uh, and with that, our managers or our scrum masters who are managing these teams, they are also frustrated. They have their own pain points. We do not know how to measure the performance of the team because they want to know whether are we going in the right direction. Can we really measure the performance of the team? Most of the people measure the performance of the team by looking at, are we doing daily stand-up, are we doing iteration planning, are we doing some kind of retrospective, but are you having systematically improvement, okay, towards the next steps, right? Are you able to go to market faster? How are you able to measure the performance of the team? That is what we are talking about from Kanban, and Kanban provides those metrics which will help us to measure the performance of the team, okay? And eventually we'll end up with poor morale and lack of collaboration. So these are the problems which Kanban will help us to solve. And not only this problem, Kanban works in all the places. Call it product delivery, call it service delivery. Okay, it works in any and every place, right? So let us, before getting into the Kanban, let us look at the history of Kanban. How did it all evolve and how did it all start? So how did it all start, right? So back in 1940s, after the World War II, the US car manufacturing companies, which is the General Motors and Ford, they had mastered the art of production lines and they were producing cars in lot. Okay, so if you see, there are two examples which I have taken, the Ford Falcon and Chevrolet Corvair. This from the General Motors and this from the Ford. And this your Toyota Tayara engine. And Toyota at that time was making a loss. Japanese car industry was stagnated and Toyota was not able to compete in the American car manufacturers. Okay, now that is when there was this engineer from Toyota Motors called Taichi Uno, who identified something called 7 types of waste in manufacturing. Now, on your screen are the 7 types of waste. The first one is the inventory. So he told that, okay, we are producing, there's a lot of in progress items, right? So whatever there is in progress and which is not delivered to the dealer or the retailer or is all in progress and it is not adding value to our organization and we have invested in it and it is all waste. So do not, you know, have too much of in progress, right? Then overproducing something which is really more needed, more than what is needed, is also waste. Then he talked about another waste, which is nothing but waiting. Delays caused due to dependencies, delays caused due to, you know, people are waiting to start one process and there is a lot of delay there. Over processing, a delay caused by over engineering or following the process that may not be even required as per the standards uh, for that particular work product. So don't over engineer your product, don't over qualify your product, right? Okay, so over processing is also waste. Defects, delays caused due to quality issues. Transport, delays caused due to handoffs from one person to another. Okay, where multiple people are involved, there are a lot of handoffs, start the work, stop the work, and it goes into another queue. Okay, so motion, delays caused due to unnecessary movement of people. People are moved from one project to another project, from another work to another work, right? So these are a couple of other delays. And finally, you might have heard, right now I'm talking about 7 types of waste, but finally, when we came into software world, they added the 8th kind of waste, which is non-utilized talent, which is nothing but about people and skill and capabilities which are not used. We are not using the right strength, okay, of the people at the right time. So these were the few things which Taichi Uno identified. And at that time, what used to happen was American companies would produce about thousands of cars and sit in the parking lot. And they would then immediately send it to dealers when it is required. And this kind of approach was difficult for Japanese companies to implement because Japan was like a small country, like island nation. And finding such type of a space was difficult and costly. So it was it was difficult for them to build, thousands of car and wait for them to get sold and park those thousands of car in a warehouse or wherever, whatever place, and they are creating again inventory. So what Taichi discovered was, using the seven kind of waste, that they had a lot of inventory and inventory took space and cost, and people's need changed over a period of time. And when we talk about people needs changed over a period of time. Let's say I've manufactured thousands of cars in my parking lot, but tomorrow people do not want to buy that car. People's demands change. They want to buy some other type of a car. Maybe we have created a manual transmission car. Maybe they want a gear car. Maybe we want a four-wheel drive car, whatnot, right? People's needs change, and because the needs change, now who's going to buy these cars, right? Now this gave rise to a system called just-in-time system, and just-in-time manufacturing system evolved there. So instead of manufacturing, thousands of cars together, Japanese car manufacturers manufactured about hundreds of cars, and once these cars were sold, they will manufacture yet another next lot, and now they don't have to worry much about the storage and huge manufacturing capability. So they don't have to worry about having a lot of assembly lines to manufacture the cars, and a lot of people which are required to be hired. So they minimize the number of people, minimize the assembly lines. Their investments also reduced. So they had a bare minimum investments in circulation so that they can recoup their investments quickly, and the customer can buy as good as next day also. So the manufacturer actually had lesser liability on the investment, and this process was called as just-in-time process. Further, what happened during that time was, this guy Taichi Uno, who was the engineer along with few others, he had during this 1950s 60s time frame, he visited United States, where he visited Ford and General Motors to figure out how did they even manufacture things. But during that time, than he being interested in terms of how they were manufacturing, while he was shopping in a grocery store, and that is the image which I have put here, a grocery store image. And there's a grocery store called Piggly Wiggly store in US. What they were doing, what he noticed was, whenever the stock on the shelf reduced, they created a card and they placed the card there saying, okay, add 25 bottles of this particular stock, or add 30 bottles of this particular stock. And some other guy saw that card and he got that signal that he has to add 25. He just puts the 25 bottles and goes away, right? And that is where he got the idea of signal card, and that signal card is called as Kanban today, for the raw material replenishment using paper cards. So here he applied that in the real Kanban world. So during manufacturing, they created about some 100 cards in circulation, and only once those 100 cars or 100 cards of 100 cars are getting distributed, and whenever the cars get circulated, only they will manufacture then. And that system became popular, and they called that as lean manufacturing. So Toyota started producing small batches. Okay, the idea of pull system became the central idea of Kanban, and Taichi Uno created Toyota production system using the Kanban. Now what else happened later? So that is what happened during the 1950s, and we know during 2001, around 2000, the software industry was moving away from the traditional or waterfall development, and they coined the Agile Manifesto, right? During that time, in 2003 and 2004, David J. Anderson also wrote a couple of books on agile management for software engineering. He was also during that time working with Microsoft, and where he implemented the first Kanban board using cumulative flow diagram. And by 2007, he had implemented a breakthrough Kanban system in a company called Corbis. So first was in Microsoft and then was in Corbis, and then he went on to write a book in 2010, and his book became a very big success. And this book is now called as the Kanban Blue Book, and this became the Kanban Bible. So this is the best book for Kanban, and David J. Anderson brought the Kanban from manufacturing to the IT or knowledge work. I will not call it as the IT world, but I will say he bought it for knowledge work. Now, when I say knowledge work is nothing but the stuff which you do every day, right? Knowledge work is nothing but what the IT folks do. Knowledge work is nothing but what the HR people do in terms of recruitment. Knowledge work is nothing but what the finance guys do. So Kanban not only can be applied in the IT world, it can be applied in HR, it can be applied in finance, it can be applied anywhere. It is a management method. So it's a method. Now, what exactly is Kanban? So let us look at that. Okay. Lot of people think Kanban means a bunch of stickies, right? Bunch of stickies on the board, and Kanban is like, to do in progress and that done thing, just like, creating a bunch of stickies. uh, However, yeah, partially they are right that Kanban is a bunch of stickies on a board. So Kanban Kanban does derive a lot from visualization, but it is more than a visual tool. But let us look at in detail what it is more than that, right? So what exactly Kanban means? Kanban is nothing but two meanings of Kanban. So when we talk about two meanings, one is the visual sign card. And when we talk about the visual sign card, it is nothing but a signal here. And another meaning of Kanban is nothing but the board. So like is when we talk about billboard, it is nothing but looking at the board is Kanban. Okay, so Kanban means visual sign card or Kanban means signal, and another meaning of Kanban is nothing but looking at the board. So just remember this, and then we will start building the story of Kanban. Okay, so Kanban is also a method for directly improving your service delivery. So it improves the service delivery or the product delivery, whatever you manage. And service delivery is the stuff what we do daily. It's the knowledge work what we do every day, right? So that is service delivery. uh, let us look at the elements of Kanban. Now, to begin with the first set of elements, we'll talk about the Kanban practices. So there are about 6 Kanban practices. The first one is visualization. Visualization is about visualizing the workflow stages. So visualization is a practice, and when we talk about Kanban practices, it is nothing but a culture of Kanban teams. Okay, it is a culture or the practices or the best practices which are followed by Kanban team. And if Kanban team is not following these practices, then they are not following Kanban. So they need to first visualize their work. So when we talk about visualizing, they need to visualize their work item. When we talk about visualizing work, they have to visualize how does their work look like. Okay, whether they are working on defects, whether they are working on user stories, whether they are working on maybe change request or whatever, right? So this yellow, green or red thingy represents some kind of a knowledge work which you are possibly doing, and that's your backlog, right? So that is nothing but visualization. You have to visualize your work, and you have to visualize how the work flows. Okay, now and these are the workflow stages here. Okay, so the second practice is limiting the work in progress. Limiting the work in progress is nothing but about stop starting and start finishing concept, and it is about managing the demand and capacity available to deliver. So by applying the WIP limit, we will be able to manage the demand and capacity. So if somebody is providing us a lot of demand, input is more, and the amount of work which we can achieve is less, then we should apply WIP limit, and we should be transparent by visualizing our work, by telling them, okay, guys, you know what, both our hands are full, and this is the amount of work which we can churn out, and this is the only kind of a queue which we can have, and this much how we can produce. Manage the flow is nothing but how smoothly we will be able to deliver. Okay, it is about delivering the work from the start line to the finish line. Okay, delivering the work from the start line to finish line, it is about how do we manage the flow to be smooth and predictable. Only when the flow is smooth and predictable, we will be able to deliver fast. And to deliver fast, what we need to do, possibly we have to reduce the batch sizes, we need to reduce the queue lengths. Okay, then we talk about in Kanban, the next practice is about explicit policies. We can have some kind of a policies. Explicit policies are nothing but how the work moves from one stage to another stage. Maybe one of the example of explicit policies moving work from one stage to another stage is nothing but your definition of done. Okay, so these are definition of done is one of the explicit policy. uh, the meeting working agreement is again an explicit policy. So working agreements or the rules of work, it is all about having the policies explicit to the people, is nothing but explicit policies. Okay. Then we talk about feedback loops. Feedback loop is having about appropriate feedback loops at appropriate cadence, which will help us to collaborate with the customer stakeholders, learning and improvements using the feedback loops. And finally, we will use scientific methods or hypothesis driven method to drive the change, improve collaboratively, okay, and evolve experimentally. And if you are not doing these 6 practices, you are actually not doing Kanban. Now, let us look at the Kanban elements, right, of the Kanban boards, and how do they apply these 6 practices. So I've given you a zoom in picture about, the Kanban board. By the way, if you guys have any question, you can post that in the chat. Okay, I will take a look at those questions in a while. Okay, so the elements of the Kanban board here, there are many elements, but few elements I'm going to discuss here. First element is nothing but the workflow stages. Workflow stages are nothing but, it is about how does your work flow. Okay, and they are represented by columns. Okay, so your work comes in the backlog, it goes into the ready state. Whenever your story or a feature or whatever is ready, it can move into development. The development can have in development or done, and then finally it will move into test, and finally it is done. And one of the practices is nothing but your visualization, and visualization of your workflow stages is also important. Now, what we say is, do not copy others Kanban board. Okay, so it is not like the same size fit to all, right? So you cannot just copy this particular Kanban board because you like this, or the colors of this Kanban board are nice. You need to determine and understand what is your workflow stage, how does your work flow from one stage to another, and how does the value flow from, okay, from the time it is received, the input is received from the customer, to the time it is delivered here, right? And you need to map that flow. Only when you are able to map, then only you will be able to visualize the workflow. Now, when we talk about visualizing the workflow, we also talk about what is there in the workflow, right? So I'll talk about the WIP limits in a while, but first thing is I'll talk about the work item types. So if you look at, there are multiple stickies here. Every sticky can represent a work item type. Work item type is nothing but the kind of a work which we do. The reason possibly these are, pink stickies is maybe it is for some kind of a reason. So the various kind of a work item types could be, you may have defects as one work item type. You may have, enhancement user stories are work item types. You may have maybe user stories are work item types. You may have maybe the automation or DevOps stories as another kind of a work item type, right? So you can classify the work item type into different work item, and with different colors on the Kanban board to visualize. And the more type of a color you see, you'll be able to exactly see what kind of the focus of the team. The team is focusing on what actually. Are they focusing on defects? Are they focusing on enhancements? Are they focusing on user stories? What are they exactly focusing on? So you need to identify what are the different types of work items, and you need to visualize them. So that is the visualization practice. You can also classify your work items based on the sense of urgency. I don't know how many people have heard cost of delay, but these swim lanes are directly representing cost of delay. I'm not going to talk about cost of delay in this particular webinar. Pardon me for that, because it's a different, bigger topic altogether. So expedite is or nothing but, there could be items which are very urgent, so the cost of delay is very high, and if you don't do, you have a lot of penalty, and there's a swim lane for that. And the moment any item is there in this particular swim lane, okay, people will stop the work from here and they'll start working on this, and possibly they have written that in the agreement or the policies of that here. Okay, or the policies can be written here, which is common to the board. Okay, that if there is a urgent item or the expedite item, you need to stop this work and move there. Fixed date items are nothing but, maybe you want to do a system upgrade, you want to do some kind of a patch upgrade on a particular day, right? On a 15th of March, you want to run maybe Oracle upgrade from some blah version to another version, because they have released a security vulnerability or whatever, and you want to patch the system. So it's a fixed day patch, right? Or you want to do a release on that particular day, you want to do a minor upgrade, or whatever. Standard could be like, these are business as usual user stories which are coming through the proper pipeline which goes into this, right? So every swim lane has its own meaning, and the moment you visualize the work, you'll exactly know what is your focus, what you need to focus, whether the fixed date item and the ticket will represent, okay, there is a fixed date here which is available here. Intangible items are couple of examples of intangible items is nothing but the items which are like, if you're building a continuous delivery pipeline, I would like to improve the automation of the code coverage of my unit test cases, right? So that's an intangible. Maybe if you don't increase right now, tomorrow, next week, it is okay. But there is one sticky here. Maybe this is taking a lower priority than rest of the others, right? So the swim lanes can represent that kind of a, classes of service, the way you will treat your work items. Now, swim lanes can be used for various other purposes. If you don't want to use swim lanes like this, okay, you can use swim lanes for different purposes. Okay, maybe we have multiple rollouts of our system to maybe Asia Pac region. We have a rollout to European region. We have a rollout to USA region, and maybe you have a rollout to Australian region, right? So if you have rollouts like this and there are customers like this, maybe the Asia Pac region customer is funding about $1 million and the USA customer is funding about $5 million. Now you know whom you have to prioritize, what you have to prioritize, and so on, right? So you get those ideas by creating those kind of swim lanes. Now I'm just going to erase a couple of things so that I can scribble more. Okay, so talking about WIP limits, if you see, what we are doing is we are limiting our WIP here. Okay, there are some kind of a numbers here on every swim lane. Okay, we can have WIP limits here. This WIP limits is like, infinity. This WIP limit is a infinity. Infinity is nothing but you can have n number of items in the backlog. That is what we are trying to say. But the ready number of items can be only 3, but the in development also items can be 3, the testing items can be 3. I don't know why, but I just took that example. Now we will talk about what does this WIP limit mean. So we will start from here, right? So when you talk about WIP limit 3, it means this column has a capacity of holding maximum 3 stickies, correct? Now this is the ability of columns. So sticky number 1, sticky number 2, sticky number 3. So I'm going to erase this once again. But at the current given point in time, there's only one sticky. So I can take more work here. So if I can take more work here, I can create a pull here. So I create the pull signal is created because of the WIP limit. Okay, because the capacity is available and the pull is created. Without the WIP limit, the pull will not be created and the system becomes a push, right? But again, now if you look at, if I erase this now, we'll take another example. The development WIP limit is 3. So already there are 3 items in development. Okay, maybe this is done, but this WIP limit is common to in progress and done. That is how they have modeled this Kanban. Okay, why they have modeled beyond the scope of this webinar, but at this point in time, you consider the WIP limit is 3. Okay, so now can I pull more items here? Okay, can I pull more work from here, from this sticky? Can I pull more work here? This sticky can come here. Maybe not, because the maximum amount of work which I can put here is about 3, unless, so there is no capacity here. So because there is no capacity, I cannot pull my work. So I'm able to manage my available capacity or capability. I'm able to choose only 3 items, work items. So I'm able to manage my demand, okay, versus the capability by applying the WIP limits. Okay, the same thing happens here when we are keeping the backlog in ready state. So possibly you are trying to bring this number of items into the ready state, possibly in a prioritization meeting or maybe a replenishment meeting. So when you are doing a backlog refinement meeting or prioritization meeting or planning meeting, you will choose only this much of work which you can bring. But if you already have this much already in the pipeline, there's no point in doing additional ceremonies to bring more work. So you are able to manage the demand versus capability The customer says, when you're going to start new work item, but you can show the customer, hey, you know what, customer, we are already full, and my hands are full because my WIP limits are full, right? And because you are being transparently showing the customer that my WIP limits are full, is not going to force you, right? Because you're transparently showing, and Kanban creates that transparency by visualizing your work, by visualizing your workflow, by visualizing your WIP limits according to your capacity, right? Now, and because of those WIP limits, we are able to create a pull signal. So I will be able to pull this item because this is done, and this number 3 item comes here, so it goes from here. Because I pulled here this one, there is an additional capacity 3 minus 2 here, right? So I can pull new item here, so this item can be pulled here, so the developer can start working here. So the pull gets progressed from the left to from the right to left, right? And the items start moving from left to right, so in this direction. Now if you look at, there is the last thing, commitment point. So this red line which I have highlighted is nothing but the commitment point. Commitment point is nothing but the amount of work which we are committing to the customer. So here, during the commitment point, we may have some kind of a meeting. Maybe in Kanban we call that meeting as a replenishment meeting. You may call it whatever you want, maybe prioritization meeting, or prioritization meeting with your stakeholder. You can tell the stakeholder, oh, by the way, stakeholder, you know what, I have a WIP limit of about 8 now, and I already have 3 items which are to be started. You can maximum prioritize another 5 items which I can take as a key takeaway from this particular meeting. So he gives you number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5 items here, and total 8 is the WIP limit, right? And from there you can start your moving it, and maybe at every frequency, okay, you will be able to do that. Now I don't know, this is not showing in another color, but this is your delivery line, okay? So at the end of this, what happens is, from the start point, the commitment point to the delivery line is nothing but your lead time. This is nothing but your lead time, and this is the time from where you have committed and where you have taken the order from the customer, and where you are delivering the order to the customer here, right? And this is the lead time. But if you're not using this kind of technique to manage, what customer feels is, the moment he has given the work to your PO, okay, and the moment it is there in your backlog, it means he thinks the work is started, and then he talks like, okay, you guys take about 3 months to deliver even a smallest thing, because everything is going in the backlog, everything is falling in the backlog, constantly changing priorities. We do not know what to do, and he feels that just because he has given, and all of these items are part of the backlog, it means that we have committed to it. It is not like that. The moment when we pull here is what we are actually committing and starting to do the work, and now only we are able to answer, and we need to measure our performance here from this lead time. Okay, so these are the few elements of Kanban, and maybe if you have any questions, you can put that in the uh, questions. I will move forward and complete this. So there are few elements from the change management principles also. Now, how do we apply this change management principle in Kanban? So there are 3 change management principles. I'll quickly rush on this. The change management principles are: start with what you do now, understand the process, what is actually practiced, respect the current roles and responsibilities and job titles. So unlike other processes like, Scrum or something, right, Kanban doesn't tell you that you need to have these particular roles. You can start Kanban immediately, even tomorrow, and you don't require anybody's permission to apply Kanban in your office or your organization, because you don't require to change anybody's roles. You don't require to change anybody's titles. You don't require to have a PO. You don't require to have a Scrum Master. You just need to agree to pursue incremental change, okay, and evolutionary change. That is the change management principle which we work. We need to encourage the acts of leadership at all the levels. Okay, so these are the kind of principles which we follow in Kanban, and uh, this is what we preach and teach, and we elaborate more on that, how we can apply change in Kanban and how do we go and implement Kanban for teams, right? Okay. Now, in the next topic, we'll just quickly look at the highlights of the difference between Scrum and Kanban. In terms of Scrum, right? So Scrum is in terms of incremental delivery, Scrum team works in fixed time boxes, maybe 1 to 4 weeks is their iteration. They complete all their works in their sprint. However, Kanban is a continuous process and it is not time bound. It is continuous. We can just continuously keep on pulling the work. Okay. The roles and responsibilities. For you to have a Scrum team, you need to have Scrum Master, you need to have a product owner, you need to have a delivery team. But Kanban doesn't require any kind of a role. You can just start Kanban the moment you think, and you just start with visualizing your Kanban board, and you gain agreement to pursue improvement, and you'll evolve your Kanban board. And there is no right and wrong of beginning the Kanban board, and eventually you will evolve that, right? Okay. Just that do not copy with others. That's what I would say. You can refer to the Kanban Blue Book, which is very good. Pull system. Each sprint starts with sprint planning meeting, and they come with the sprint backlog for the items to be pulled in the sprint. So in sprint, what happens is the items are pulled into the sprint, or based on the capacity, everything is pulled. But again, at the end of it, again everything goes back to the backlog. But in Kanban, each of the column has a WIP limit, and a pull is enabled when the capacity is available. So it's a continuous flow of work, and if whatever not delivered, it doesn't go and sit in the backlog, the item doesn't return. But if we drop an item, the item may get aborted, and we are purposely stopping it, and we minimize those things so that we save on that effort. The team works on iteration backlog or sprint backlog in the iteration for the iteration duration. New items have to wait for the completion of the iteration or your sprint, right? So the new items need to wait. However, development team works based on the pull signal. If you have capacity, the new item gets into the workflow immediately, just because if the team feels and the stakeholder feels it is priority, it gets in immediately. Daily stand up, it is more or less the same thing in Scrum and Kanban. Review, we know about Scrum. At the end of the sprint, there is a review and demo and feedback for the completed. But here in Kanban, each item can be removed and demoed as soon as it is developed, and we can package and release it as soon as it's completed. Retrospective at the end of the sprint, and retrospective here is periodically, right? Now, what are the benefits and trends of Kanban, right? And after this slide, I'm going to take questions. So benefits of Kanban: transparency. So management gets transparency because you are visualizing all the work. If there is no sticky on the board during your daily stand-up, also you don't have to take an update. There is no sticky means there is no work in progress. Okay, you don't have to give an update. No work started. If there is a sticky on the board, it means work has started. And these days, your rallies, your Jira, Azure DevOps, all of these tools promote Kanban, right? And there are other dedicated tools like Swift Kanban, Kanbanize, and Nave, which are other Kanban tools which will help you to visualize these Kanban boards in a software also, right? So Kanban exposes bottlenecks. It exposes bottlenecks in terms of the defects, the blocked items, the items which are choked in the workflow, in the middle of workflow, which are not moving. And constantly every day when you are doing a stand-up, you are able to see the items are not moving. You'll be able to identify the bottleneck. Kanban is having less resistance to implement because you are not changing anybody's roles. You are not changing any processes. You are keeping the roles and processes constant, but you are improving the processes to the next level by agreeing to do better every time, by exactly looking at your lead time, you're exactly looking at your throughput by applying the WIP limits. Okay. And Kanban works for any kind of environment. Let it be knowledge work, let it be software development, let it be HR, let it be finance. Okay, it encourages collaboration. So Kanban puts a constraints with the explicit policy, WIP limit. It encourages collaboration between the team members. It focuses on managing work than managing people. Okay, it helps in building self-organized and high-performing teams in a true sense. It promotes continuous improvements, and it's a truly agile way of working. Now, these are a couple of trends which we see in this industry, and these trends are taken from actually scrum.org. The link is given here, right? Okay, what are the other practices you see in addition to Scrum, right? 81% of the industry is adopting Kanban, 55% DevOps, 34 TDD, and 27 XP. And this published in scrum.org, not also in Kanban University website. So this is what is the adoption rate right now, right? And if you guys like to learn Kanban, this is the learning path. Okay, but if you guys are managers or scrum masters already, my suggestion is you can begin here. This is a very fundamental course. It is a one-day course which is good for people who are like team members but who do not want to take agile project management as their key area. But people from scrum masters or managers can begin here, because this course covers this as well as advanced other concepts. And this is the next advanced course, Kanban Management Professional 2, which will talk about scaling of agile practices across multiple levels. If you look at even our SAFe framework also applies Kanban at all the levels. At the team level, you have a team Kanban, program Kanban, you have a solution Kanban, you have a portfolio Kanban. Without Kanban, things do not scale. And unless we all know, managers, agile coaches, how do we exactly apply Kanban at all of these levels, will not be able to achieve enterprise agility or that business agility. Okay, I'm going to pause here and check if there are any questions and look at that, right? And if thank you for listening to me, and if people have a hard stop, you guys can drop off, but I'm going to look at some questions which are there here. How do we track partially completed task? Okay, so Abhishek is asking, how do we track partially completed task? If I'm interpreting your question, you're talking about user stories are having multiple tasks. uh, you can create advanced Kanban boards wherein you can see a user story can get visualized that it is showing you multiple tasks. And there are tools like the Azure DevOps, which shows you that there is a Kanban sticky or that user story sticky and there are multiple tasks, and it gives you a strike through that the task is completed. If you're managing a physical Kanban board, one of the Kanban swim lane can be split and again it can be merged. It is an advanced concept which is taught in KMP1. Okay, so using that we should be able to manage, and there is no right and wrong if you want to design such kind of approach. Prakash Naidu is asking, intangible swim lane, please elaborate. Prakash, intangible is nothing but it is what we feel it is intangible, right? What is the urgent swim lane? Urgent is nothing but there is an urgent request from the customer, so I created an urgent swim lane. Okay, what is the intangible? Intangible is nothing but I don't have to deliver that value right away. It is not very business critical. It is like something like building continuous delivery pipeline as an example which comes to me. Okay, or improving some kind of a uh, improving some UI or UI functionality, for usability purposes. But if I don't improve my usability right now, tomorrow, next week, am I going to die or fall from the chair? Maybe not. So it's an intangible effort. But definitely, because I don't improve my uh, usability functionality, or if I don't have a continuous delivery pipeline, maybe my competitors may improve that and they may go to market faster, or their products may get sold. So possibly I have about 3 months or 4 months to improve that. So those are the items which I put them in the intangible. So it is just a name. If you don't like intangible, you just call it whatever you want, it doesn't matter. And Kanban doesn't bother about all that. Okay, so then we have the next question. What do we do if we have stickers are not moving, slow or late in one of the swim lanes? Say the testing is slow, in which turn will hold my progress tickets as well? So Abhishek is asking another question. If your tickets are moving slow, and Abhishek, the important thing is for you, The fact that you are able to visualize the ticket is moving slow, and you realize that the ticket is going to move slow, and you realize that you are going to have a tough time little later to deliver this on time. Okay, now you need to figure out by doing the root cause analysis why your ticket is moving slow. Is it a big ticket item? Is it a bigger batch? It is a bigger work. There is a lot of variability. How do you have to minimize the variability? Kanban doesn't tell you how to minimize that variability. You need to apply what are the best practices, how you need to minimize the variability. It only exposes bottlenecks for you, Abhishek. So Kanban doesn't tell you you do number one, number two, number three. So then it means I'm trying to modify your process. You figure out by doing those number one, number two, number three, is that even useful for you? Then you gain agreement to pursue that improvement. That is what is our Kanban principle, right? If you feel that, okay, I want to chunk my story smaller so that, it goes through the pipeline faster, that is when maybe you want to do that. Or maybe you want to do automation testing. You figure out what does your RCS say. But important thing is Kanban will help you to identify bottlenecks. Next question is, what is the criteria for selecting Scrum and Kanban? Okay, so Prakash, I already covered that item. You can go through the video why Kanban. So once again, essentially when you have Kanban will work in all the aspects wherever Scrum works. But I'll tell you where Scrum will fail. You will not be able to do sprint planning or iteration planning without having sufficient ready backlog. Okay, you'll do vague sprint planning, and that is what I talked in the initial when I was trying to build the case of why Kanban, right? So there was one slide where I talked about it. So you can go and refer to that particular content maybe in the first 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, that is where you can use Kanban. Then there is another question, remote working, from Arun Kumar. Shall we create this kind of a table with header, or do we have any tool for Kanban board? Okay, so tools for Kanban board, please explore what kind of tools. There are few tools which are available, for 3 months free and all of that. Azure DevOps also gives you trial version, but everybody has their own license cost. And in your most of these tools like Jira, Rally, Azure DevOps have the fundamental functionality of Kanban. And I'm using Azure DevOps. I've seen people using Jira for Kanban boards, and around and many of the industries or companies are using these products, right? So you just need to leverage those tools, right? How to create that Kanban board. And during your daily stand-up, ask your team to present that Kanban board and talk about the stickies. Otherwise, your daily stand-up will look like, what I actually did and how did I spend more time rather than how did I move my sticky from one step to another step, right? Then there's one last question which I will take from, I think it was from Abhishek or Prakash. I lost it. Prakash, I feel, does Kanban board have capability of displaying closure dates of web items or highlight the delays? Yes, Prakash, it has the capability of disclosing the closure dates or shorter dates. But again, these capabilities, if you are looking in the tool, it's a tool specific question. Whether Azure DevOps is having or Jira is having, it all depends on whether Atlassian or Microsoft has implemented them, or how you can customize those tools for your benefit. For physical boards in a sticky, but right now we are moving into remote. We are already into remote way of working. So my suggestion, focus on what Rally, Azure DevOps, Jira, and many of the things which will uh, give you in the market, right? So, but there are dates, change by date, deliver by date, and all of those fields, and you can bring those from the settings of Azure DevOps, which I've seen, into the Kanban ticket. And when you visualize, no, all those attributes of the ticket also are visualized. Abhishek, there is no increment in Kanban. It is a continuous flow of value. So we do not define an increment. Continuously, we keep on delivering the value. It is a continuous flow of work.